No, we've planned that out. So it's on the website. If you go to Brigham Larson Pianos, so it's Larson with an O, pianos plural, brighamlarsonpianos.com/soundboards. All of the information, the slides, and then I also have some other stuff. Tour of the shop and some other stuff.
What is it again one more time?
So brighamlarsonpianos.com, and Larson is spelled with an O, and pianos is plural, and then /soundboards. So yeah, welcome. This is really exciting. By way of introduction, I've been doing this. It'll be 30 years next year. I started in 1995. Absolutely fell in love with the work. Thank you. I absolutely fell in love with the work, and I really enjoy doing this. I never wake up and dread going to work in the morning. I hope none of you dread going to work in the morning. I hope you all enjoy this work. I think in fact, I said to my mentor, and I'm going to talk about him in a minute. I said to my mentor probably 20 years ago, you just feel like incredibly blessed to be doing this work, because this is so cool. And he had that same reaction, like, yes, absolutely. So okay, so I started, like I said, in 1995. In 2000, I got married. My amazing wife, she's right over there on the side, and she's absolutely my partner in every way, including in the business. In 2000, we moved into a 700 square foot condo, very small, and that was also second as our shop. We had 7 pianos in that 700 square foot condo at one point.
Did you live in that condo?
And we lived in the condo, so it was our,
wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
it was intense. She's a very patient woman.
That's impossible. But go
Saint.
ahead.
She is a saint, yes, agreed. And then it was actually 2010 that we had moved on a little bit, and we were in a little bit bigger house. We had 23 pianos in that house, and she said, maybe it's time. Maybe it's time you get a commercial location. And she was just very patient, kind of gave me that nudge, and I said, okay, let's do it. So we moved into a commercial location, and then that exploded. And then 2014, we purchased a larger shop and showroom in Orem, Utah. So that picture was taken in 2014. So here's the, well, actually, I'll get to that in a second. Okay, that's not the only thing we've built. Not just the shop. We've built a family together, and they are wonderful children. And now, actually,
is that your workforce?
So that's our workforce. Yeah, we've got some. In fact, this one here and this one. He's now a big football player. This was taken. Actually, had COVID in this picture. This was 2020. So 4 years has done a lot for this one in particular. He's a big boy, and so those two are my movers. And then this one's a chemist, and so he wanted to learn electroplating. Electroplating is all chemistry, of course, and so he learned electroplating, and so he does that for me. And then they've all done different things. There's the shop. So this is sorry.
You've been busy.
We've been busy.
Shop and all that.
Yeah, we've been very busy. So this is the main showroom. That's the view coming in from the front door. Second floor right there. And then there's so that's the last picture was taken from right underneath the chandelier. There's the second floor, and then this goes up to the 3rd floor. There's the shop. We restore about 100 pianos a year. The vast majority of those are like 1880 to 1930, something like that. But there are some outliers. About half of them are from Utah, and the other half are just kind of scattered throughout the United States. Here's another part of the shop. That's the first shot from the opposite angle. And there's the refinishing room. I chose this picture. This guy here, he's amazing. He's a machine. And I chose this picture because we're talking about restoring soundboard, so I thought this was the perfect picture to talk about that. And there's the team. So those are the two boys that I was talking about, the movers and the team, the refinishers. These two, he's here and she's here. And actually, he's interning. If any of you know Steven, he's a good guy, and he's interning. We do an internship program, and then there's my son that does electroplating. And I won't play this video, but if you're interested, you can watch a drone tour of the shop. Okay, before we get into it, I just want to make some acknowledgments. First, I want to mention Curtis Biggs and Matthew Westman. They did a lot of the pictures in this, and they've helped a lot with the presentation. And then Christian Bolduc, I'm sure you all know him. I've taken a number of his classes, and I've found him over the years just very inspiring. And I've taken a lot of these ideas and just kind of adapted them for our purposes from him. And then of course Del Fandrick, also same thing, taking classes from him, found enormous value in his classes. And then everybody know who that is? Bill Spurlock. So he's a brilliant engineer. He's not in the business, unfortunately, anymore. Fortunately for him, but unfortunately for the rest of us, because he's an absolutely brilliant engineer and came up with some great ideas that you're going to be seeing here in just a minute. And then finally, Vince Merkelo. Anybody know Vince? A few people know Vince. So he's really my main mentor. Starting in, I joined the guild in 1999. That's where I met Vince, and I mean it was really through the guild and through Vince mainly that I really was able to get my feet under me on piano work.
OSU.
Oklahoma State, yeah. And I think he's presenting later. He's flying in tomorrow.
Good.
Okay, so I mentioned this, BrighamLarsonPianos.com/soundboard, and we have the slide deck there, a drone tour if you want to see it, and then we're also doing, we did a restoration giveaway this year where we're restoring a full piano for a family. We had a lot of entries. We like to gather stories, history. I'm actually a history major, and I'm kind of obsessed with history, and I feel like pianos are kind of the perfect culmination of American history. I mean, there's so much in there, from the economics to craftsmanship to geographics to the European influence, and then from Europe, and then conversely influencing Europe, and then influencing Asia, which of course has taken over, and now they're manufacturing way more pianos, way more units every year than the United States or Europe ever have been able to do. So history is a big deal. And so we're gathering all of these stories, and people send us videos and kind of create a mini documentary of their family story with their piano, and we choose one and we give away a restoration. So if you have any clients that might want a free restoration, and you feel like they have a good story, we're gathering all of those stories. So our plan is to do this year after year, and then to make all of these family history stories involving pianos and families, or whatever it may be, available in kind of an archive. That's the bigger vision there. Okay, let's kind of start to get into the material. So, purpose of the soundboard, of course, is an amplifier, right? If you've ever you've ever played an electric guitar without amplification, and you can kind of hear what's going on there in the Beatles' green room. You know, Paul is even like trying to hear his bass because he doesn't have that amplification on his guitar, and you can kind of hear what John's guitar sounds like. It's kind of tinny, kind of weak, and if you were to string up a plate without soundboard, you could play it, you know, if you wanted to, like with mallets or something, and it would sound weak, and it would sound tinny, and it would sound thin, and it just wouldn't have that big, beautiful, rich resonance that makes all of us so obsessed with pianos, both playing and restoring, the gratification that I'm talking about. So soundboard is kind of the heart of the instrument. And the key to that resonance, that richness and beauty, is tension. Tension and compression. I'm kind of using that interchangeably. So of course in a drum, where you have a head, I thought this was a perfect picture because you can see the ropes, you know, pulling it tight from all sides. And that's what gives it its resonance. Similar to the tension, well, on wood, you can't pull it tight, and so you squeeze it. And that's what we do on guitars, violins, and pianos. We squeeze it tight, puts that wood under tension, and it gives us resonance and amplification. So this, that what I'm talking about when we squeeze it, that is soundboard crown. And so this machine, this is at the Highland factory. These are these hydraulic rams that, this is a template right here, and then immediately underneath that is a soundboard, and holes in the template where all of these soundboards go, and this is creating that crown in the soundboard, putting that soundboard under permanent tension. There's various ways to do it. You can do it with a curved rib, or you can squeeze it in the rim as well. So that's kind of one of the ideas behind the rim. You can see crown there quite a bit. This is a Yamaha C7, and so you know that's a fair amount of curve in that board. There's more pictures of rims kind of holding that tension. Okay, I asked ChatGPT, why is wood resonant under tension? And I won't get into this too much. It was just kind of more of a curiosity side note. I don't really care why, it just does. But ChatGPT talked about elasticity, and again, these are all going to be available if you're interested, or you all have access to ChatGPT as well. And then the amplification and sustain, that's what we want out of the soundboards. We want amplification and sustain. So that was just kind of a fortunate part of that. And then third, consistency. Okay, and I think, you know, ideally we're going to replace, this is actually a Dale Irwin soundboard that we put in this time. And ideally, maybe we would replace soundboards every time. I mean, I'm not totally convinced of that. This piano right here that I brought, that crazy ornate one, the guy that we did that for requested that we keep the soundboard original. It's covered in cracks, and if you look on the inside, you'll see lots and lots of repairs in it, lots of shims, and that was a request, and the customer ultimately is king. And maybe that particular piano, if there ever was a piano that merits a new soundboard, maybe that would be one. But the customer requested that we keep the original wood from 1901, and so that's what we did. So,
did you try and talk them out of it?
No.
Okay.
No, because I think this is fun too.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah. And I've had pretty good results
Okay,
with this, what I'm going to be talking about, so I felt good about it. But a lot of the pianos that we do, personally, I love all pianos. I did happen to bring two Steinways. I thought that people would appreciate that probably the most. But I love Spinets. I love P22s. I love Vos and Sons. I love Mason and Hamlin's. I love Thompson, and I mean, you name it. No name pianos that you'll see once and never again that was manufactured. And you 1905 or something, or 1875. I love them all. I think they're awesome. And the vast majority of them, frankly, I think it's pretty hard to justify, especially for an upright. It's pretty hard to justify the expense of replacing a soundboard. And after all, we're all in business, and so hence the class, restoring soundboards rather than replacing. Okay, the title of this class, Restoring Crown, is a little bit of a misnomer. I think it's more like restoring tension. Tension is the key, and everything you need to know to get it done. So we're going to be talking about a whole lot of material really fast, so buckle up. Okay, we're going to cover rib separation, rim and belly rail, soundboard cracks, and bridge recapping. Yeah?
So sorry.
Sure.
The piano that you brought, that you were just talking about?
Yeah.
You did this procedure to it?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah, both of them.
Okay.
Both. So one is a 1901 Steinway, and then the other one is an 1884. The upright is 1884.
Awesome.
Okay, so section one, rib separation. Sometimes it's very obvious when you just by looking at it. Not always. Sometimes you have to push on it. Something like that is extremely obvious. That's bad. That's a really bad one. So we start with just kind of visual inspection, kind of take stock of what we're doing. Sometimes you've got to push on it, especially around the cracks, and see what you can find. So push on every rib, both sides, and then that's also a good time to do the perimeter as well, looking for any kind of separation. And sometimes you can even hear it. You can hear the glue cracking, and so that's another good indication that even if it's not separating you, even if as you push on it, the rib is moving with, or the soundboard is, the rib is moving with the soundboard, then, but it's cracking. Sometimes that's an indication that maybe that's one to address anyway. Yeah.
Are you checking with like a feeler gauge or
Just pushing on it.
just to see if it moves?
Yeah. See if you can get separation like this. So this one, if you looked at it just visually, it wasn't initially like that, where it's just like that at rest. But you had to push on it and you get a crack. So that's fairly common. Okay, so the first thing we do is we mark the location so we know exactly where the rib is on the other side, so we can get dead center in the middle. You can do that various ways. Putting wires through works well. Okay, then I've done this for many years, and it works great. We're going to choose a screw that is going to not go all the way through, just for visual purposes. I don't think it really matters, frankly, if you do go all the way through the rib from the other side, but just for visual purposes, I like it to not. So I'm going to choose a screw that fits lengthwise, and then 2 drill bits. We're going to choose one drill bit that is slightly larger than the major diameter, so that it creates a clearance hole, right? That the screw just passes freely through. And then we're going to create a pilot hole with that smaller drill bit that because it's a soft wood that we're dealing with, I'm going to go slightly smaller than the minor diameter. If it were a hardwood and you go smaller than the minor diameter, you risk cracking. But this is soft wood, so I like having a little bit more bite. And then of course this is the idea of you've got the junction between the rim and the soundboard there. You've got a clearance hole so it passes easily through, and then sucks the rib together after you have injected glue. You can also use tape for the depth, or I've also used like a thin piece of metal, like a ruler, to kind of slip in there so that I know that my clearance hole, I'm not going to accidentally go into the rib. Okay, proceed with the holes, and there if you look closely, you can kind of see the pencil marks, so that we know we're getting right in the middle. And then we just use bamboo skewers that we get on Amazon, you know, for shish kebabs or whatever. And that's a really convenient way to open up that crack, get lots of glue in there, way more glue than you would normally use for that kind of a thing. I just want to make sure that it's super well coated, and then screw it together. And always, for sure, do that by hand. If you try to do that with the drill, you risk stripping the screw. And plus, it feels so good. As you're screwing it by hand, you can feel the glue kind of squeeze out. It's just a very satisfying kind of feeling.
Like what glue do you use, and do you thin it and put it in the syringe?
We just use this one was the molding glue, and yeah, you can thin that like 5% maybe if you need to.
That's your non-drip molding glue?
Sorry?
The non-drip molding glue?
We've used Type Bond, and then we'll use molding glue as well.
It's not too thick?
It might be. Yeah. So depending on the size of your syringe, I guess. Okay, then we use a number 1 drill bit to after it's dry to drill out that hole, and it's just I think number 1 drill bit is 228. So hammer shank I think is 218. So it kind of just fits perfectly for a hammer shank in there, and then the shank also acts as additional reinforcement. And there it is when it's initially cut off. And then start to kind of clean it up. Yeah. So this is after all of the sanding. You can see those little dots. I actually really like the dots. I'm going to talk about that, and I like these shim stripes as well. I'm going to talk about that a little bit later. I just think it's kind of a cool maker's mark. Okay, next section, very similar, rim and belly rail, looking for these kinds of separations. This rib is supposed to be nestled in there, and that will cause a really obnoxious buzz as well. So same thing, skewers, injecting glue. Okay, so this one we were using the Type Bond.
Could you go back 2 slides? Next one, back. See all the marks in the liner below that rib. Yeah, those.
These
where are
marks?
those from? Yeah. Somebody's been hitting it with something.
I'm not sure.
So I'm just curious.
Okay, yeah, I don't know. Put in there, again, way too much glue is what we want. And then clamping, there's a couple ways to do this. You could do the same technique. This is another technique that we use extensively, and I'm going to be talking about this in at least 2 more areas. Yeah, question?
So a couple slides ago, I saw all the screws in the shim. Did you kind of pull it apart, like where you think it might loosen up over time, and or was it actually loose the whole length of the rib?
So we've done both.
Yeah.
Like I said, if you're pushing on, because the initial step is to investigate the entire length of on both sides of every rib, and some will be very obvious. There'll be obvious separation, and then others you'll hear the old hide glue cracking, and so if you do hear it cracking, then that's a pretty good indication that it might be a good idea to do exactly what you're talking about. Okay, so this, like I said, we're gonna talk about this in 2 other sections in this presentation. It's a very effective setup with pipe clamps. So we've got kind of 2 clamps on each pipe clamp. So the lower one is holding onto the piano, and then another one over there. The upper one is for here. We have a steel tube. We've used 2x4s or 2x6s or whatever. It's just something to clamp against, and then we've got bar clamps here on the, rather than on squeeze mode, they're on spreader mode to clamp that down. And then clean off the excess glue. Okay, soundboard cracks. I think of it, I can't remember junior high geology. I can't remember what kind of earthquake is like this and one is like that. Maybe someone can help me out, but this is more the severe. I think the earthquakes that are like that, those are the severe ones. That's just like that. And there's a mason panel that has quite a few cracks in it. Okay, we're going to be talking about shimming, but more importantly, we're going to be talking about restoring tension. That's the key. Yeah.
When you're re-gluing that up, do you turn the piano on its side or upside down ever? When you're doing the gluing process?
I don't think so. No. Unless there's a, I'm trying to think of a compelling reason to put it on upside down. What's that?
Gravity. With the glue set.
Oh, for the glue.
Yeah.
Oh, I think we're putting so much pressure on with the clamps that. Okay, so shimming. The key ingredient is restoring tension. That's what actually I brought this this piano. I thought, why not? And this is just one that I grabbed out of the shop like the day before we were loading out. I thought, okay, this one. I went around and listened to different soundboards. Thought this was a good example. Okay, it works better maybe if your ears are right here, but you can hear it just sounds like a drum, and in fact, you can even feel air coming out of these little holes. I mean, it's like it's moving air. It's really I don't know if you can hear it, but it sounds like a drum, right? Very resonant, and you can feel it in your chest. And so that's this restored tension that I'm talking about. This piano did not sound like that before. And by the way, this is a I can't remember the year, approximately 1915. It's a Brewster. I mean, who's ever heard of Brewster? Who cares, right? But they're awesome. They're fun. They're pianos. They're great, and they can sound really, really good with restored tension. Okay, what we're going to need for shimming. We're going to talk about shimming first, and then we'll get into restored tension.
You drawing up the board first?
Okay, so that's something that we haven't done, but I'm fascinated by that, and something that I want to experiment with. Yeah.
Did the
Put
Rochman
it
Dam
in a
Chaser.
hot box. What's that?
Rochman Dam Chaser.
Yeah.
A couple blankets in about 3 days.
Yeah.
Where you're in
Sure.
Orem, is it, Provo?
Orem. Yeah, just next to Provo.
You're already at
We're already fairly
80%?
dry. Yeah. Yeah, that's right. But I mean, in a hot box, you can get it down to what, 8% if you do it for a couple days. So yeah, that's something that I'm fascinated by. You know, I mean, could we get it even better? Maybe. Okay, so this is okay. Spurlock dagger rider jig. If you haven't used that, I think Canotech sells it. Very handy. We've got 2 or 3 of them, and we use them every day. And then you need an aluminum rail as your track with double-sided tape, and then lots of bits because we go through lots of bits, and then various sizes of shims, and then some other. We've got this shimming tool and a razor because there are lots of places that the Spurlock jig can't quite reach. And then there's that setup again. This setup is really the key to the success that at least that we've seen in restoring that boom. This piano, by the way, I wish there was some way I could give you kind of a before and after, but you just can't do it. This piano sounded like hitting drywall. There was nothing there, and so yeah.
I would say, like, in a sense, you could maybe go underneath the piano. I mean, it's not going to sound the same. There's stuff on it. You can hear the resonance, right? Like, it sounded flat versus more resonant on a piano.
When it's under tension.
Yeah.
So or up to when there's strings on it.
Yeah.
Or loaded, I guess. It doesn't. Booming, kind of pounding on it like that, it doesn't work as well.
Yeah.
You've got to get your boom out of playing it.
Sure.
And so it's harder to tell.
Okay.
But you can tell that the piano doesn't sound good.
Right.
Okay, so this is what I was talking about, the key to restoring tension in that board. Again, pipe clamp setup, but rather than like we were doing before, we were clamping from above, now we're clamping from below. So here's again, that system, we've got it now below, where we clamped it on the piano there, and then we've got that same steel tube underneath, and there it is from below. So we're pushing up on the ribs, and not on the soundboard itself, but on the ribs. And this is a Yamaha C7.
And you're basically right over the ridge there?
We're right in the middle. Yeah, as close to the middle as we can get. The idea being that we're forcing it up as much as we dare. I think if you really went for it, you could probably destroy the soundboard, but kind of squeeze it until you just don't dare do it anymore. And the amount that it changes is pretty significant. We'll get into that. Okay, so the idea here is to be like a keystone in an archway, where of course this archway, probably weighs several tons and it wants to collapse, but because the shim in the middle, it even has the Yamaha logo on it. Fortuitous Google search. So the soundboard wants to collapse, but because the shim is kind of V-shaped or keystone shaped, it can't collapse. Okay, let's see. That's the picture I was talking about. So usually you have about, I don't know, on a C7 you have a little bit of crown, but when you've got it under tension, you've got probably double the amount of crown that you can reasonably expect, because you're really putting a lot of upward force on that. Okay, then because of that, the aluminum track no longer bends enough to compensate for that much. So we're going to compensate for that with the punchings. And then there's a couple ways to do this. You can set your shim, or your bit rather, to the exact thickness of the soundboard, though I prefer to do several passes, kind of do 3 or 4 passes, get a little bit deeper every time, and the maximum depth that you want to go is to the very bottom of the soundboard. And this can be tricky because the soundboard, you're dealing with the bends. What's that?
It's tapered.
Yeah, it's tapered, and then you're dealing with the tapers, so it can be tricky. It's easier to go in several passes. Plus you get a straighter, more visually appealing finished result when you go several passes. And then, actually, one of my technicians doesn't do the Teflon. The other one does. Actually, most of them prefer the Teflon, just because it just makes it smoother. And this jig does tend to kind of bind in the little slot there, but the Teflon helps you get a really nice straight route. Several passes. And then the ends, like I said, there's only so far that you can go with that jig. shimming tool and a knife to finish it up by hand. And then, okay, the shims are in and out many times because you're trying to, every shim kind of becomes its own little sculpture. You're really kind of sanding and finding, okay, where are the high spots, where am I missing, and then you got to round it off at the end to match the shape of the bit at the end. You can see it rounded off there. And so dry fit many times before deciding it's enough. And then, because again, we're going to be using intentionally way too much glue. We're just trying to avoid at all costs. We're going to try our best to avoid having any gaps in there. So we're going to use way too much glue, and in preparation for that, we're going to clean it up or tape it to prevent too much necessary clean at the end. And then tap in with a mallet.
When you have a shim that ends like that, do you make a vertical cut, or do you kind of match the taper of the shim on?
Yeah, I think we just do a butt joint. Yeah. Have you done differently? Have you done
I've
like
kind of shaped it so it can kind of push into that.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And that gives a really nice tight joint.
Nice tight fit. Yeah, that makes sense. And that's by the way a hole in the soundboard for the hole. And then shape it, chisel plane, and sand it flat. And then this is the point at which the technicians are done now that it's pretty flat, and then the refinishers take it from this point. So this is, I think this is the C7, and then this is a chickering, which if you've ever worked on a chickering, they can be very difficult actions to work with. Okay, then okay, this is what I was talking about, the maker's mark. I don't go to any effort at all to try to match the wood, because I like it. I like being able to open up the piano because, you know, we're, as much as we don't like to admit it, we're salesmen for our customers. We want to open up the piano if it's an upright or look inside, and we want to be able to sell to our customers, look how beautiful this craftsmanship is. And I think these lines, anybody know what this is called? This
I don't know
art?
what it's called, but that's what I was gonna say, it's like that.
Yeah, this is a Japanese art form. It's called kintsugi, where it's a Japanese or Japanese, thank you. The Japanese art form of putting together broken pottery. And they make it beautiful. And I mean, you can see, like, obviously that's a high level of craftsmanship. And I feel like shims in a soundboard, especially when it sounds good, you can back it up with the beautiful maker's mark of the shims that look good in the board.
Would that be called shim Suzy?
Yes, thank you. Shimsugi. I like it. So there's a few boards with shims in them. This one had a lot. Uprights. This is a Viennese action that it's hard to see. But this one had quite a few shims in it as well, and this one sounded amazing. Just a really resonant, rich.
There's straight grain orientation from front to back.
Yes, that's right. That's right. If you didn't hear what Dave said, we've got the orientation of the grain in the same orientation as the strings.
Which is also straight string.
Okay. All right, and again, if you're going to undertake this job, you got to be armed at least a little bit with bridge capping, and it can seem kind of intimidating, but it's totally doable. It's not bad at all. Okay, so this starts with a Mylar template, so we can get exactly, and we can make changes from the Mylar template factory. They were just kind of cranking them out, and they didn't get things in a beautiful straight line, and so we're going to make a few improvements. Sometimes even the side bearing isn't what we want it to be, so maybe we might make some changes on the X axis as well. And Mylar, by the way, you just get a roll of it on Amazon, pretty cheap.
Is that actually Mylar or acetate?
Mylar? That's what I just get on Amazon, and that's what I type in. Okay, edges need to be flush with the edges of the bridge, so that again you know that your XY axes are correct. And then this isn't necessary, but this is just a reminder to future me the direction that the pins go, just so that I double check, make sure that I don't drill them the wrong direction. Don't ask me how I started to do that. And then, okay, this is what I was talking about here, straightening out that factory job. Sometimes the, not only the lines in this direction, but also the lines in this direction aren't beautifully parallel. And again, it's a good place for us to work out our OCD, get everything nice and parallel and straight. Okay, some bridge caps come off very easily. Sometimes they, let's see, which one is it? I think it's this one. Yeah, you can see the seam. So it did have a bridge cap originally, but others, it's just from the root all the way to the top. It's just one solid piece, so there is no bridge cap, and those are a little bit trickier to remove. Did you have a question?
Yeah, back to the side bearing.
Yeah.
What is acceptable for side bearing? Just as long as there's a little bit of angle to it?
Okay, that's a good question. I do it by eye. So not too much, too little. It's kind of like reshaping hammers. It's just not too egg-shaped, not too pointy. I feel like the absolute no-go is no side bearing, because then you get buzzes. As long as there's some bearing, you're not going to get a buzz. Okay, so like I said, if you're lucky, it'll chisel off easily if it has an old cap on it. And if you can remove the bridge, which is usually not the case, but if you can, then a bandsaw works well, but actually a table saw works better. But most of the time, we use just kind of scrap wood, make a little router table with 4 little legs on each side. And if, again, it depends on the project, but most of the time we're doing it with the plate out, and then you can do it very easily, get it all balanced above the bridge, resting on the soundboard. But if you are doing it with the plate in, which sometimes we have to, then you're gonna have to fit it to the crazy contours of the plate. So these are just a few that we had laying around the shop. Everybody understand what's going on here?
No.
Oh, okay. Sorry. So they're custom made to the specific part of the bridge that you're going to route down, and so these fit directly over and try to get it pretty well basically to the perimeter of the bridge, and then put that down. You can fasten it down again. You can use tape or something, and then just go over it with a router and use that router tape. This is a router table to keep your router nice and level, and it'll take several passes again. Any questions about that? And I think this one here is actually, I don't know if you can see on this little upright, this long bridge here was actually in pretty decent condition, except for the top of the second break, it was completely out. The cracks were so bad, the strings were straight, and so I think that's what this technician made that little tiny router table for this piano. Okay, then shoe pegs. Again, you can get them at Shaft. Piano peg. It's kind of fun. Tapping them in. There's another one with shoe pegs in there. They're all routed down using one of those router tables. Filling the holes, and then they just come right off. Again, very satisfying to kind of chisel them off. You've got your root that's ready for your cap. Okay, so the new cap, I want it to overlap on all sides, and I also want it to be too high. As long as it's too high, it doesn't matter how much too high, just too high, because we're going to bring it down for our down bearing. And then overlapping so that we can trim it flush. Gluing on, there's various ways to do this. If you can remove it, clamps are the easiest way. If you can't remove it, then either screws, again using that clearance hole, pilot hole system, or you can also do the double clamp method if you don't like the idea of drilling through. But there again, when you put dag on the top, if you do want to use the screws, it's probably the easiest, and you never know that it was there.
So you didn't use the go bar, that kind of method to clamp the shims down. You just tap them in with a mallet.
Oh, okay. So the shims, yeah, we tap them in with a mallet, and sometimes we'll grab weights and just stick them on.
Okay.
Yeah, like we'll use a set of key leads.
Tuning pin box.
Or tuning pin box.
Yeah.
Bucket of water.
Thank you.
So yeah, double clamp method works really well. Also, if you don't like the idea of drilling through your cap. Okay, trim the edges. Trimmed it. Now the fun starts. Reinstall the bridge if you had taken it out, and the plate. And you don't have to do all the screws. You can clamp the plate down if you wanted to, and that would work fairly well, or just kind of do the screws around your target areas. Okay, so here we have one end string pull it all the way across, and this is how we're going to find the down bearing. Like I said, it's way too high at this point, and that's very intentional. And we're going to pull that string across, and we're going to get into the numbers that I've had good luck with, and I mean I'd be open to try whatever, but I'll talk about numbers here in a second. We're going to pull that string across, and the idea, you can't really see it in this picture, but we're kind of lowering that string slowly onto the hitch pin, and the idea is that it's going to, if you want zero bearing, it would touch the hitch pin and the bridge cap at exactly the same time. And then if you want a little bit of bearing, 20,000, 60,000, something like that, then use a punching to kind of gauge your down bearing. Any questions on that? Yeah.
When you put this piano back together with a good string tension, the down bearing is going to push that down.
Yeah.
How much allowance do you get?
Okay, so that's what I'm going to talk about in my numbers. It's similar to maybe pitch raising, where you're kind of guessing, more or less, and you kind of have to go by past experience. Cross your fingers.
Well, you've had some experience now, so you're probably the best person.
So I'm fairly opinionated on numbers. Yeah. Okay, so each time you pull it, trench in the bridge cap and make a pass every time. Check with the string, make another pass a little bit deeper, check with the string, make another pass until you're down to your target points on each trench. So there you can see this.
What are you using to load the board at this point?
To load the board? Well, and that's what he was just talking about. We're not. We're just going off of numbers that we've had a good experience with.
Sorry.
No, that's a good question. I mean, if you wanted to do that, wedges underneath the plate if you wanted to. I think some people have super fancy setups. I don't. Of using like a press. Gives you exact numbers. Okay, there you can see, there we've got down bearing where we want it. Okay, so these are the targets that I've had really good luck with, and again, it depends on, sort of like pitch raising, it depends on the part of the piano that you're doing it in. In the bass, I like 0 or slightly more than 0, just a little bit, because again, like you were talking about, that board is going to be deflected by the rest of the strings, and you don't want negative, and so in the bass, straight across or just a little bit. And by the way, the idea is, my feeling is, the bass doesn't need any more power. The bass needs more sustain, and they work opposite. They work in inverse relationship, where if you have a lot of down bearing, you're impeding the soundboard, so you're affecting your sustain negatively. And then conversely, if you have 0 down bearing, you're not going to have as much power, you're not going to have as much transfer of energy from the string into the bridge into the soundboard, but you'll have lots of sustain. So the bass doesn't need any more sustain than it already has, but it doesn't need any more power than it already has, because in proportion to the rest of the piano, it can easily overpower the rest of the piano. But what we do want is sustain. And then the low tenor, again, I like, and this is just maybe the bottom, maybe 5 or 6 notes. I like 0 or 10 to 20 thousandths bearing. High tenor into the treble, 40 to 60, I've had good luck with. And then in the high treble, 60 thousandths. Again, these are what my ear likes, because it gives you lots of power. And there's nothing you can do to help with sustain up there. Yeah.
Could you touch on how you compensate in the bass for your wrap and your plate belt for your bearing?
Oh, yeah. You're talking about the felt that's installed on the
Felt plus
on the plate.
the bass strings are going to have to be wrapped before they touch your plate, so they're going to be higher than the starting point of your string.
Yeah.
So how do you compensate? What do you add to your bearing numbers? You say 0.
Yeah.
What are you going to add to that to compensate?
So if there's felt on the plate, sometimes there is, sometimes there isn't. We'll try and take that into account by using the same level of felt. But then for the other, we haven't done anything to compensate for that. We just gone with these numbers, and they seem to work well. But yeah, good question. Okay, when we find the proper down bearing, we're going to blacken the bottom of the trench. Again, this is I mentioned Christian Bolduc. This was directly from one of his classes. This works really well. Just a Sharpie on the bottom, and then pass after pass after pass with the hand planer, power planer. And by the way, on this one, you can see that this bottom one is pretty much there, whereas these other two, and that's pretty common, that it's not going to be perfectly level. There's going to be one part of the bridge that's going to call for slightly different down bearing, or or slightly different level, I guess, because that's what the down bearing calls for. That's pretty much there. There's a finished, just ever so slight traces of that Sharpie left over. Okay, now we get back to that Mylar template. And then pencil things out with the aid of the Mylar template. And this makes a really nice, even, uniform spacing in the duplex or the bicourt area. So these are just pilot holes. Or in the case of the monochords, just the hole works just fine. A gag. Is the bridge ready for chiseling? Start drilling. Okay, so two ways. If you can remove the bridge, the drill press works great, but most of the time we just use this jig and do it by eye. And that keeps you pretty well aligned.
What angle do you like to do that?
I don't remember what angle that is exactly. This one I found the angle based on the rest of the piano, and so I just matched that. And then this one of the technicians made that, and then it's just worked. So that's generally what we use. Okay, then on the side of the bridge you can see that pencil line. That's a depth line for how deep our notches are going to be. And I don't know if you've ever seen videos of the guys at the factory that do the notching. They're incredible. They just kind of hit it on the side and then scoop it out, and then move to the next one, hit it, scoop it out, and they've got a whole bridge done in half an hour or less. They're unbelievable. I cannot do that. So what we do is we put a line there, and that's going to be our line for the saw. So this is a pole saw, so you have a very thin kerf, and what you're doing is bisecting the hole right there on one side, down to the line, the depth line on the side of the bridge on the other. And bisecting is the key to all bridge holes. And then start chiseling. Chiseling is fun. Okay, you can see the hole is bisected in both this direction and that direction. And then clean that up a little bit. And it looks nice. Nice and good. Driving pins. Okay, grinding the tops of the pins for beauty. I don't generally just leave them rounded. I do like to grind them down. I think it looks better, and it's too hard to. I do want that pin to be buried all the way to the bottom of the hole, and it's just too hard to get the depth of that hole exactly consistent all the way across. And so grinding the tops makes it look a lot nicer. And this is one option. This is, the technicians hate this because it is so loud, it's so obnoxious and screechy, and amplified, by the way, by the soundboard. So another option is just a little handsaw. Actually, the technician that took this, she likes to go actually a little bit lower than this. So that's, she'll do like maybe half of a hammer shank to 3/4 of a hammer shank. width, and she'll use that and then just saw along there. And then just kind of use that grinder thing. That's just a file if you can't tell. She'll go over that just for kind of a final pass, rather than going all the way down with just the file. And by the way, this goes really fast. Just doing it by hand, you think that sawing through all of those pins would be a major hassle. It goes really, really fast. And then lacquer. And then some of the final products. That's that chickering brand. This one, I can't remember which one that is. There's a 18, I want to say 75-ish Steinway thread. This one, that's a 1898 Kanabi. That one, I don't know what that is. There's another Steinway. One is a 1925 model L. This one, actually, I thought this one was 1880s. This one is a crazy story. The serial number had been altered. Somebody had put in a 4 in front of it, and so I thought it was 1880s until the end. And we looked a little closer, and we saw that 4 looks a little bit different than the rest of the numbers, and then we realized, no, this is 1864. So this is a Steinway Style 1, which by the way, then we called up Steinway and asked them about this particular serial number, and they confirmed, everything. It's an 1864. They said it was built 1864. It was sold April 1st, 1865. And then I looked it up and thought, I wonder when Abe Lincoln was shot. April 15th, 1865. So this piano was sold and installed in somebody's house, most likely. Well,
I'm thinking the same thing as you did there.
It was installed most likely when Abe Lincoln was still alive. No, sorry, that's the chickering.
Well,
and that's the
that
double.
plate, that piece.
Okay. Thanks for coming, everybody. Any questions? Yeah.
What would you do to restore crown if you didn't have any?
If it didn't have it?
Throughout there.
So this is what I would do. I would just crank that, jack that soundboard up as far as I can until I just don't dare go anymore, and then get those shims really nice and tight in there. Again, the idea being that it's like a keystone in an archway, so that it can't collapse back down. It will collapse some, but hopefully not all the way. Yeah.
So is that for a situation where there are no cracks in the board when it's flat?
Okay.
Do you make cracks?
We have done that before, and it works.
How many, and how little spaced out, or?
I think we did 3 cracks.
Just on one side of the long bridge?
Yeah, just they were, approximately 1, 2, 3, something like that. And it worked. Yeah.
maybe I missed it, but what did you put on the top of the bridge cap? The black material?
So it's just graphite mixed with alcohol. Or you just buy it, it's called DAG. A shaft.
How come you use a router to bring the bridge cap down or a bandsaw when you can just use an electric hand plane and take like 5 minutes and get it down?
The router, so initially we're just using the router because we can go because we're creating those trenches.
I'm saying for removing the old bridge cap.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's a pretty, it takes like 5 minutes to remove the whole old bridge cap if you use an electric hand plane for that.
That's a good way. So that is usually how we do it.
Not too close to the rim, that's good.
Yeah, that's right.
Get neighbors.
Yeah, he said as long as you're not too close to the rim. Yeah.
You described before you push the soundboard back up to the depth down. So you just go a little more than describing. How do you know when you go to the form?
Whoops.
So far, we haven't had any whoops.
Sound, feel, tension?
Until you don't dare go anymore.
Okay.
I don't know. Yeah, because it does start making some scary noises.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the board is flat and not crazy, not cracked. It helps dry everything out as low as you can. Before jacking everything out. Because if there's any possibility of something shattering or splitting, the EMC is very low. So you can jack it up.
Sorry.
I'm saying to reduce the EMC in the wood as
Okay.
low as you can
Before jacking it up.
Before jacking it up. And if something's gonna break, it's gonna be when you're jacking it up, when it's standing dry.
Yes.
Which would tell you where to put it. Otherwise, you would just simply using the best judgment.
Yeah. Great. Okay, anything else? All right, this is a real pleasure for me. First time, so I appreciate being
No.